Hello everyone, it's Atlas, and in this video I'm going to be bringing you a complete guide for my most played character, Vindicta. In this guide, I will be going over Vindicta's strengths and weaknesses, abilities, item and skill build, laning playstyle, and mid to late game playstyle. Let's get into it. First, I will be going over the strengths and weaknesses of Vindicta. First, I'll explain her strengths. Vindicta has one of the highest damage potentials in the game. Once she has her items, she does ridiculous amounts of damage with her weapon. Second, she has elite range. Nobody can really contest Vindicta from far away, excluding maybe Grey Talon. It also allows her to be less committal when it comes to fights and ganks, since she doesn't have to fully go in to deal damage. Third, her mobility is pretty good. Vindicta has a very high base movement speed with 8 meters per second, as well as having the best vertical mobility in the game with her flight. Lastly, she has one of the highest snowball potentials in the game. No other character in the game so far has an ability that directly gives them extra souls. This allows Vindicta to quickly accelerate her farm faster than anyone in the game, and once she gets her items, she can quickly become unstoppable. So Vindicta has a lot of great advantages, however, those don't come without major flaws. First, she is extremely squishy. Vindicta doesn't really have anything in her kit besides her stake to protect herself if somebody manages to close the distance and fight her directly. If you don't space properly on this character, you are going to die very often. Another weakness of Vindicta is her poor wave clear and jungle clear. It is very difficult for Vindicta to clear waves and camps, as her main source of wave clear is just her weapon, since both Crow and Stake don't do much damage and also have long cooldowns. The third weakness of Vindicta is the fact that she is very soul dependent, and that's because her main value in fights is her damage, and if she doesn't have items or ability upgrades, she won't be able to do the amount of damage necessary for her to have a real carry impact on the game. Her cooldowns are also extremely long if she doesn't have ability point upgrades, so she can't really fight that often since her cooldowns will just be down. Lastly, she is one of the most aim-heavy characters in the entire game. I genuinely wouldn't recommend playing Vindicta to those who aren't confident in their aim. Oftentimes, hitting or missing your snipes can make the difference between killing an opponent or letting them get away, and that could really hurt your chances to snowball or win a lane, for example. And it could also lose fights if you're not able to get up in the air and start tracking people from very far away. So it's very important you got your aim down and you're able to consistently land your shots. Overall, Vindicta is a high-risk, high-reward character. If you're able to work around your flaws, you will be rewarded with one of the highest carry potentials in the game out of any character. Next, I will be going over Vindicta's abilities. Getting started with Vindicta's abilities, we have her one, which is her stake. When you activate this ability, you will throw a moderate speed arcing projectile that will explode when it makes contact with the surface in a small area. If an enemy is caught in this area, it will tether them within an 8-meter radius, as well as slowing them by 30%. The base cooldown is extremely long, as you can see, at 42 seconds, so make sure you are using it wisely in lane. The ability upgrades for stake are, with one ability point, a 0.5 second tether duration increase. With 2 ability points, it gets 19 seconds off its cooldown, and with 5 ability points, enemies hit by the stake will also become disarmed. Stake can be used offensively to chase down enemies, and also lock down important targets for your team, and make it easier for you to hit shots. It can also be used defensively to help peel yourself from enemies that are trying to dive you or run you down. There isn't really any creative tips I can tell you to help utilize Stake better. Just make sure you are looking to predict the enemy's movement path, since it does take a bit of time to travel if you are far away.
Tying them down.
The next ability we have to go over is her 2, which is Flight. When you activate Flight, it launches you into the air, giving you a burst of momentum, and then allows you to hover there for a default duration of 8.5 seconds, scaling with Spirit Power. You can use the default bindings of space to fly up and left control to fly down. This ability can be cancelled by pressing 2 again. While you are in flight, the bullets you shoot will deal bonus spirit damage that also scales with the Spirit Power. The base cooldown is 42 seconds, which is extremely long. What its upgrades are, with 1 ability point, it gives you plus 50% base ammo while flying. With 2 ability points, it cuts the cooldown down by 14 seconds. And with 5 ability points, it increases the base spirit damage by 12 per bullet. The way you want to use flight is to create a better sightline for yourself to deal damage while also making yourself safer by creating a lot of distance between you and the enemy due to being in the air. It is very difficult for other characters to reach you due to being so high up, so before taking most fights, you want to make sure flight is available to give yourself as much of an advantage as possible. Another way you can use flight is to activate it and then quickly cancel it to give yourself a ton of momentum. Here's an example.
Get the drop on them.
You see, it can send me flying pretty far, almost all the way into this room. This technique can be very useful for getting away from enemies that catch you off guard or try to dive you. Like, let's say a lash jumped at me from this route. I could pop this, and I'm out of there, hopefully. Also, if you ever face danger due to being out in the open air, you can cancel flight by pressing 2 and double tapping control to dash towards the ground to drop LOS. This is really good for, let's say, there's a Paradox charging up her Kinetic Carbine looking to swap you. You can just immediately drop out of the flight and break LOS so you don't get swapped. Vindicta's third ability is Crow Familiar. When you activate Crow, it shoots out a linear, fast-moving projectile that, on impact, will deal a little bit of spirit damage and apply a base 3% current health bleed, as well as minus 6% bullet resist. The cooldown is 26 seconds as a base. The upgrades are, with 1 ability point, the Crow will ricochet twice towards enemies within 15 meters. With 2 ability points, it gets 16 seconds off its cooldown. And with 3 ability points, the 3% current health bleed damage is doubled, and now applies a 40% healing debuff. Crow Familiar is by far Vindicta's worst ability, and it's not really close, as it really doesn't do much meaningful damage, and it's pretty difficult to land due to having a small hitbox. The best tip I can give for this ability is to set it up by using Stake to limit the enemy's movement, and then you just follow it up by hitting Crow since they're slowed, and yeah, it doesn't really do too much. Vindicta's ultimate ability, or her 4, is her bread and butter, the Sniper Rifle, aka Assassinate.
Gets easier every time.
Activating Assassinate scopes your rifle in, and a green meter will start charging around the crosshair. The more charge this meter has, the more damage the shot will do. Your shot will also do extra damage on enemies below 50% health, and getting the kill and blow on an enemy with Assassinate will give you bonus souls, base amount of 250. Assassinate also has no fall-off damage and 0 travel time, making it truly hit scan. As we can see here, I was perfectly on him, it just fires a straight tracer and immediately does the damage. The upgrades for Assassinate are, with 1 point, the cooldown is cut down by 19 seconds, with 2 points it deals 140 bonus damage, and with 5 points you will get 600 extra bonus souls if you execute a player. And the way you want to be using Assassinate is to execute low health targets to make sure you get the bonus souls, and that will help you snowball. One of the most effective techniques for doing this is quickscoping. Quickscoping is often necessary because it can be difficult to keep track of enemy players' movements while zoomed in due to the decrease in FOV, combined with the extreme mobility with everyone jumping around and a big team fight. You know, they're going to be moving out of your scope, and you don't want to have to basically randomly flick and try and catch them. So the way you do this is you just be aiming. Let's say this is some random enemy in team fight and I need to shoot him. Boom. It's very simple to do a quickscope. Another thing to note is that the shots from Assassinate also pierce targets, so in niche scenarios where something stands in the way of your primary target, like let's say they jump behind a minion or a jungle monster, you don't need to work around it. As you can see, I shoot through this guy, I'm aiming at this urn, and it just goes straight through. Hey, 4% weapon damage is pretty cool. Overall, Vindicta's abilities are built around enabling her to deal as much damage as possible with her weapon. Pretty much every ability is just enabling her to do damage with her weapon. Her Stake will limit their movement, making it easier to hit shots. Your Flight will get you into a better position, so you can hit shots easier, especially headshots, since you'll be directly above them. And even the Crow, I guess it gives you 6% bullet resist, so, you know, wow, that's so useful. Guys, please make Crow a real ability. It is not real. Please, Valve, make that ability real. In this section, I will be going over Vindicta's item and skill build. And so I have made a video about my own builds, and if you want to look for it and search it up, it is AT1S47 hybrid build. However, I do feel like I have a lot of items in here that I don't really explain too well, so if you do want to find a more like short and concise build, I like Recren's Vindicta build. It's pretty similar to mine. I think he has pretty much a lot of the same items. I don't really like Vampiric Burst and Pristine Album, but that's just personal preference. So I'm just going to go over now and describe my build, and for the early game, Headshot Booster and Hollow Point Ward, I'm buying pretty much every single game since they're just super strong gun items. They give you a lot of weapon damage, and Headshot Booster especially is super nice for pushing the wave and getting big trades on your opponents, and Vindicta does a lot of damage with headshots. Extra stamina and sprint boosts are just because Vindicta is super immobile without these items. You only have 2 stamina base on Vindicta, so extra stamina I almost feel is necessary. You can really sell it later on if you need defense, but I always buy it in lane usually. Extra regens here in case it's a difficult lane, and then these 3 items are components for items you will buy later on. And then for my mid-game items, long range, which will build into sharpshooter, this is a must-buy in Vindicta since you're going to be extremely far from people the entire game. Next, I would go into combat barrier since it will give you a large amount of bonuses, and you're going to have the bullet shield up most of the time since this will also be giving you bullet shield health, and you're going to be super, super far from people, so they won't be able to do too much damage to you, ideally, unless they're diving on top of you, and this is just going to be up a lot of the time. Next, I also have Headhunter. It's just a super strong item, and if you do land the headshot, you move a lot faster in the air. It makes you much more elusive to hit, and the burst damage is super nice, as well as the bullet velocity, making you, just easier to hit shots since you don't have to predict and lead as hard from far away. Alchemical Fire I have in here. It's very, very good as a combo with your stake. It also helps your team a lot, since if you do catch someone and throw Alchemical Fire, they'll be taking 50% weapon damage from everyone, not just you. So they're pretty much guaranteed dead if your team's with you and you stake someone. Burst Fire, I like to choose between these two, depending on the comp. If I feel like I'm going to get dove or pressed a lot, or I don't think it's going to be easy to land my stake, I usually go Burst Fire instead, because it just makes you super, super mobile, and your gun will shoot really fast, and it feels very good and satisfying. And I like Quicksilver. I also buy Quicksilver Reload very early on. I don't know why it's in the end here, but I buy this as one of my earlier mid-game items, and I put it on Crow because it feels super natural on anything else, since Stake and Flight are very long cooldowns. And hey, we can find some use for Crow, right? I mean, that ability is really terrible. And I don't put it on Assassinate since Quicksilver Reload has an innate cooldown timer, and it also feels super natural to just quick scope and shoot your Assassinate even if the target's not low at all. And, having to just quick scope and go in and for no reason to reload is super annoying. And then next, this whole section is defense. I'm not going to go over this too much. This is pretty much just situational items. Debuff remover, I think you need a lot in games because there's so many fire rate slows, and also knockdown. This can cleanse off knockdown or anything like silence, I believe. Metal skin if you're facing like something like a haze. Yeah, I'm not gonna go over all of these. I go enduring speed pretty much every game, and also fortitude since I really like the movement speed. And then late game items, I think Glass Cannon is super, super good on honestly any weapon damage character. It just gives you so much weapon damage, I almost feel like is a must buy, and the minus 15% health isn't a big deal since you'll be going barriers, barriers into Veilwalker most of the time. And tripling headshot, it's good because you can cut down resistances, really good into tanks, a little bit of lifesteal is nice. Soul Rebirth is basically for super late game, and if you die, your team loses a game, then you'll want Soul Rebirth since you don't want to lose the game if for one random death and your team can't help you. Just buys time. And Curse if there's like one specific player who's just really, really fed. It's really good into fighting Yamatos as well in case they don't ult in time and actually let themselves be cursed, then they'll just be dead. For this upgrade section, I upgrade these if I'm snowballing or trying to snowball super hard, since they mainly affect your ult, and if you upgrade your ult to do more damage, it'll be super easy to get executes, since especially rapid recharge, since it allows you to just kind of spam your sniper and not really have to wait too long for it to recharge. And Improved Burst just makes it do a lot more damage. Improved Spirit's just there in case you need to fill a Spirit slot. I don't usually upgrade this early on. It's basically late game, I just have a million souls and I need to upgrade something. I'll go up Improved Spirit. Alright, here I'm going to be going over the skill order as well. I always start with Stake. I feel like it's a great way to get early kills, especially in a dual lane. If someone just completely runs it down and overextends, you can throw Stake on them and they'll just be trapped and die. I do Crow third just because it can combo with Stake really nice and it's very low cooldown. And Flight last because it's very easy to just kind of take cover from Vindicta in lane. You can hide under the bridge, you can hide behind the Guardian. There's a lot of cover places in the lane itself, so Flight isn't super useful. You basically have to get directly on top of someone. And it also doesn't last very long with the base duration. Obviously, I put the last point in the ult, and then I've saved up all my points, and I immediately dumped them all into my ult. And the reason why is, you want to make sure you're upgrading the bonus souls per assassination first, since that's going to give you the most snowball potential. Since 600 extra souls is a lot. I mean, you're almost getting an extra 1,000 just for hitting a snipe. So after that, I immediately upgrade my Flight to the lower cooldown part, because Flight, I think, is your most important ability to have in a team fight, since without it, I don't think it's really viable for Vindicta to be joining team fights, since you just will have a terrible line of sight, and you'll be very easy to catch out since you have no mobility tool. And then after that, I like to put 1 point into Crow, and the reason for that is it helps you farm jungle camps a lot quicker. There's a lot of 3 medium-sized monsters on the tier 2 camps, and you put the Crow on those, it bounces to all of them, does % health, helps you clear the camps a lot quicker. And after that, I put all my points into Stake, and the reason for that is the disarm is super strong. I would say once you get your disarm, a lot of matchups like that were bad for you before can go really good for you. Like, for example, Haze, I would say, is pretty much impossible to deal with until you get disarm. But once you get disarm, if you land that on Haze, she literally just gets annihilated and does nothing. After that, it's kind of just whatever points. None of these really do too much. I mean, I put the 2 into Crow because the healing reduction on tanks can be useful sometimes, and 6% bleed, you know, it's finally starting to do a little bit of damage. Like, you might actually see their health bar go down if you hit them with Crow. And then last, I do 12 spirit damage per bullet on Flight because, I mean, it's nice, but it's not really that useful. And yeah, that's the skill order. Now I'm going to quickly go over Vindicta's general laning playstyle, and this won't be going over every single situation you'll have in lane. This is just a general guideline and rule set that you should follow when you're going into a laning phase with Vindicta. So on Vindicta, your main trading tool is going to be your weapon, since it is one of the more powerful guns in lane due to its high base damage and range. The main goal you should have in lane before you get your ult is to secure as much farm as possible while balancing poking the enemy with your gun. You should also constantly be looking for opportunities to land stakes, since if the enemy happens to get caught in the open, you'll be able to get very good damage on them and potentially even a kill. Something you would want to avoid in lane would be close range encounters. Vindicta doesn't really build any melee items ever and always wants to take fights at range, so be careful when going to secure minions with melee, and be wary of veils or cover where the enemy could be hiding. You also don't want to hard trade if you don't have your stake up, since they'll often be able to out-trade you with their ability advantage, since a lot of these characters in lane are going to have shorter cooldowns than Vindicta, since hers are very long. Once you farm for 3,000 souls, you unlock your ultimate, and you get a lot more agency in the game. In solo lanes, you become much stronger than most enemies once you get your ult, since it has such good single target damage, and you can start forcing fights and all-ins, since in most cases you'll win as long as you hit your shots. In dual lanes, however, you have to play off your teammates still, since if you just go for an all-in with your ultimate, you'll likely just get focused down and one shot, since you're still very squishy. The real power of your ultimate, though, is its gank potential. Make sure to be looking at the map and the location and HP of nearby enemy lanes, and if they ever walk up just a bit too far, feel free to pop over with your Flight and take a few shots at them, and try and get the last hit with your ult especially, since It'll accelerate both you and your teammates' soul income, and really just benefit your team immensely. This ganking playstyle is especially strong because enemies won't have any items to defend against you. They won't have any actives that can reach you and dive you. They won't have any resistances to counter your high damage. So I would recommend just moving as much as you can, and any opportunity you can find to take a favorable fight, I just go for it immediately, since you are extremely strong once you get your ult. If you find yourself in a losing situation where your team can't really do much and you can't really do much, make sure you are very, very careful of dives or getting ganked yourself, as you will pretty much pop like a balloon if anyone who's super strong jumps on you, and you'll be quickly falling behind, and at that point you won't really have much use, and it can be kind of difficult to farm back into the game as Vindicta since you can't clear camps or waves super well. And that is all I have for this section. Let me know if you have any questions about specific lanes. I can't really get into crazy detail since it would take an extremely, extremely long time to go over every matchup, but I have almost 60 games on Vindicta at this point, and a lot of it is in high MMR, so I'm pretty good knowledge about specific matchups if there's anything you need to know. Before I get into the mid to late game playstyle with Vindicta, if you found this video helpful, I'd appreciate it if you could subscribe to my channel and like the video, since it really helps the video and my channel get a lot more reach. Moving on to the final section of the video, we have the mid to late game playstyle, and Vindicta in the mid to late game in a nutshell operates very similarly to a traditional MOBA marksman or attack damage carry. It is very important that you keep up and farm, however, you don't want to go for risky waves and camps that can potentially put you in danger, as it is very easy to get caught on this character. Ideally, you would also want to stay close to the majority of your team, since as long as you are nearby, it is very easy to just fly over and immediately start having impact if a random fight breaks out. Once you are actually in a fight as Vindicta in the mid to late game, you should try and stay in flight as long as it is safe to do so. You should also try and combo your stake with your teammate's CC to make sure that it lands, and it will just provide this extreme lockdown combo that can pretty much guarantee a kill. Other than that, it is fairly simple. Make sure nobody can get close to you and play a point and click adventure game, quickscoping with your assassinate whenever necessary to finish off opponents. When it comes to taking objectives on Vindicta, with the urn you don't want to be the actual person turning it in, because let's say you got randomly attacked as you're running the urn. You would basically be dead guaranteed because you'll be silenced, you can't fly away, and you will get popped by a balloon by like 90% of the characters in the game if they have any type of soul lead. Or really any items at all. Instead, you want to be hovering around the turn-in area and just scouting and looking out for any enemies who may be trying to interrupt or steal the urn souls. If someone does try and challenge your sightline, you can often just shred them to pieces immediately. As long as they're not directly going after you, you have a great opportunity to just kill any player as long as you have your items and are decently strong. When it comes to taking the mid-boss as Vindicta, you don't want to be in the actual pit after the Rejuvenator coming down. And the reason for this is you're pretty much guaranteed to die if, let's say, something goes wrong. Like, let's say Summon Furnace runs in with his ult and steals the Rejuvenator. Now you're stunned and you're dead immediately. Meanwhile, if you play on the outside of the pit while still having good line of sight to it and good sight lines, you could throw your stake in the middle of the pit, stun whoever was going to steal it, and maybe prevent them from actually getting the full melee off and hitting the rejuve. You'll also be likely to kill and clean up the aftermath of the fight, so even if the enemy did steal it, it's not that big a deal since they just ended up immediately dying anyway. And that's all I have today for you guys. Make sure to leave a comment down below if you have any specific questions that I didn't go over. I have to kind of be general with this guide, unfortunately, otherwise it would be like an hour long. And if you have any requests for future videos or guides, like let's say you want any hero, I'm glad to put in the time to learn that hero and create a guide for you guys. And yeah, subscribe and like the video, and I will see you in the next one.